Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Heartbeats of Adapted PE podcast. I'm so excited you're joining us for episode 4. I'm your host, Jen Hebink. I am a full-time adapted PE teacher just outside Minneapolis by about 40 minutes. So I'm from Minnesota, and in Minnesota, we call our adapted PE teachers DAPE teachers, developmental adapted PE teachers. So if you hear me say DAPE, that is what I am referring to. I've been a full-time teacher in Buffalo for the last 15 years. I'm going into my 16th year of teaching. It's just wild to think about. But I want to share a little bit about why we have titled this podcast the Heartbeats of Adapted PE podcast. First of all, our mission is to inspire, connect, and amplify adapted PE teacher voices and those who support all students. So you might see on this podcast, you might hear from adapted PE teachers, but you might also hear from support staff that will help make our lives as adapted PE teachers a little smoother and help our students be more successful. So I'm excited to share our guests for today. We just have one guest, but in the future, we're going to have some support staff that will allow us to increase our understanding of what it means to support all students. The vision of this podcast is to celebrate the heart, which is the storytelling and the fact that, we're human beings. We teach because we have passion, and there are stories either within our daily life of teaching or our private life at home that really propel our passion and help us get through the hard things. And then we want to celebrate the beat, which is the daily rhythm, our favorite movements for our movers, our favorite activities, our favorite habits and things that help us do our life better as adapted PE teachers and those who support all students in our essential field. And so when I think about where this podcast has come from when we were building it and where it is now, like that really, really is the mission and the vision behind this podcast. Today, this podcast and this really the overall podcast is a not for profit podcast, which means we serve our community. We are not getting paid for this podcast. It is released one time per month. And so because we're busy teachers, like it's not going to come out probably more than once per month. Maybe we'll have a special episode every once in a while. But look for us about one time per month. This podcast today is brought to you by Fit and Fun Playscapes, and you can find them on X at Fit and Fun Play. And they are a sponsor for the 25-26 podcast year. And I would love for you to check them out. Our guest is going to talk a little bit about how she uses Fit and Fun Playscapes towards the end of her time with us. And now, in order to introduce our guest, I needed to share a story with you all. So in order to introduce her, back in 2022, I was named the Shape America National Adapted PE Teacher of the Year for Adapted PE. And that came with so many opportunities that just opened the doors wide open for me to share my heart, my passion, and for me to kind of soak in like a sponge what other teachers do well and what works for them. And so that came with, as I walked through into that opportunity to be a teacher of the year, that also came with this teacher of the year family. And one of my sisters, who's from the Western district, Kasha Givenrod, she's from California, Southern California, which is where this guest is from. And we had talked at Shape NOLA back in 2022 about the NAPEC conference and how this National Adapted PE conference was just so awesome. And I kind of at that point put it in the back of my head that like this is going to be a bucket list conference for me. And I added it to that bucket list. So later that year, I saw these posts from Kasha showing the National Adapted PE Conference, NAPEC, and she got to keynote that conference. And what was so special about that for her was that she had attended that conference as far back as an undergraduate student. And so at that point, keynoting for her, it was this full circle moment where she got to stand up and address her colleagues about her passion, her story. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And with that being a bucket list conference for me, I literally texted Kasha. I said, if there was a conference that I would ever want to keynote, it would be NAPEC. And it was not more than 3 weeks later that I got a text from this guest that you're about to meet, literally asking me to keynote the conference. And I got to go to California, keynote that conference, my first keynote. And I think I kind of caught the whiff of what it means to keynote, and it was good. I loved keynoting that conference. And actually, while I was keynoting, I met up with someone in the audience from Arizona, and they asked me to come keynote their conference. And so it just continued to like open up more opportunities for me to speak to others. And so that I love that conference, and I loved meeting all of our adapted PE teacher friends in California. And I feel like this guest specifically, I feel like we could just sit on what we say is the big comfy couch, and we could just talk about adapted PE, but we could also talk about life. We kind of did that for like a half an hour before we even started. And so she is here to highlight and teach us about her life, but also life as an adapted PE teacher in the early childhood setting. And so I would like to welcome to the show Miss Heidi Ambrosious. Woohoo, Heidi. Here we go.
Hey, thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. Your podcast is amazing. I've been listening from the beginning, and I love the whole philosophy, the heart and the beat. It's just amazing. So thank you for doing this for adapted PE teachers. We need this. We need this. We need to be talking to each other. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to invite you to keynote NAPEC, is because when Kasha did her keynote, I saw how impactful it was. It was like, she's one of us,
Yeah.
And to hear her stories and her inspirations, it just got the wheels turning. Like, we need to bring someone. We need to bring someone that's one of us. And so thank you for doing that. I'm so glad that it worked out so well. And it was amazing. It was amazing to have you. And I really appreciate you having me here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you. I just feel like we're adapted PE sisters. Like I said, like we just sit down and just chat. But I want to start off with this first question that I kind of ask everybody. What is your background, and where and how long have you been teaching? And it sounds like that might be kind of a loaded question for you. So go ahead and share.
Well, it's just because my background is a little bit different. Yeah. So I've been a full-time adapted PE teacher for 26 years, which is crazy to say. It's still the best job in the world. I love it. It's changed a lot for me over the years. I'll talk a little bit about that. But my background is different. My background was dance. I was a dancer.
Cool.
Yeah, I was a dancer. I fell in love with dancing when I literally was 3 years old. And it gave me so much. It gave me so much self-confidence. And I was able to express myself. Plus, it was a physical outlet for me. So when I went to college, I actually decided to major in dance. And my parents fully 100% supported me. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. If you're listening, my dad loves when I do podcasts. Hi, Dad. Even though, like, there's nothing you can do with a bachelor's degree in dance. Almost nothing, right? But I was like, you know what? This is the only time in my life where I'm really going to be able to study the thing that I am the most passionate about. And that was dance at that time. So I majored in dance, and then I discovered something called dance movement therapy, which is kind of like music therapy and art therapy, only it's with movement. And so I took a lot of psychology classes in addition to my dance classes. And I ended up going to UCLA to get my master's in dance movement therapy.
Wow.
Which was amazing. But in my second year, I did an internship at a psychiatric hospital, and I hated it. It was so stressful for me. It was wonderful for the patients. The patients were amazing. It just wasn't a fit. And that's one of those times in your life where you're like, okay, this is something has to change. I was not happy. And so in the middle of that second year, I had a conversation with another one of the girls in the graduate program. It was a very small program. There was only 9 of us. And she had told me about this teacher that came to her mom's school that pulled kids out of class and worked on motor skills. I was like, what is that? That sounds amazing. What is that? I didn't even know what it was. I had never, ever heard of adapted PE. So a friend of mine was at Cal Poly Pomona at the time, had a catalog. Literally, I'm dating myself, a physical catalog. So it was huge.
Paper.
And and I'm thumbing through it and I found adapted PE and I started reading the course descriptions. And I literally in that moment was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. So I literally graduated with my master's degree on a Saturday and started credential and adapted PE courses on that Monday.
Wow. Right into it.
I went right into it. It was nutso. Like I said, thank goodness for my parents' support. I'm like, oh, guess what? I'm done with my master's, but now I'm doing this.
Guess what, Mom and Dad? More money.
Yeah, guess what, Mom and Dad? It was once I started taking those adapted PE courses, it was clear, like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. But because my bachelor's was not in kinesiology, I studied under Perky Vetter at Cal Poly, and she did have me take motor development, motor learning. I had a little bit of that through dance, but it was different. So to give me that really, really good foundation in order to, be an effective adapted PE teacher. And that program is amazing because they have a motor development clinic. And after the first year, I actually got hired as an adapted PE teacher on an emergency credential here in Moreno Valley, where I'm still teaching. I'm at work today. And so I've been teaching here ever since. My first 4 years, I had 9 different school sites, and I had kindergarten all the way through post-secondary. I was all over the district. It was a crazy schedule, but it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. Even though I hadn't done traditional student teaching, I had a lot of guidance from our very seasoned APE teachers that were here at that time. And then after that first 4 years, the adapted PE teacher that had the preschool retired. And I was the only one that wanted the preschool. So my love for preschool goes back really far. My mom was a preschool teacher before she became a kindergarten teacher. And my dad used to license preschools. That was his job in the state of California. So it was like in my blood. And I used to volunteer and go to the preschool with my mom during the summers because I loved working with preschoolers. So it was kind of meant to be. It's in my blood. At that time, our preschool program was pretty small. I still had like 4 or 5 other schools. I was only at the preschool 1 day a week, but it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And now it should be full-time. I'm basically full-time at the preschool, but I do have one other elementary school, which I love. It's just hard I have so many students and so many assessments at the preschool. It's hard, but I do love it to have, that variety of working with some older students. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. A little bit different than some people's paths. I love to find out how people discover adapted PE, because all of us have a little bit different of a path, but
we do.
Most of us, once we've landed here, we know that it's
we're here to stay.
Yeah.
We're here to stay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of this podcast we talked about in the beginning is just like celebrating the heart and like the fact that, we do have stories as teachers. We do have lives that aren't perfect at home or like things that we've had to go through. And so for you guys in your family, it's been cancer. So I do want you to just share whatever you're comfortable with about how cancer has been a part of your family journey. Just for the next couple minutes, tell us about it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm pretty open. I share. I have no problem doing that because I feel like when other people do that, that only helps you as well.
Yep.
So my son was diagnosed with brain cancer when he was 2.5. And my husband swears that I saved his life because of what I do for a living.
Okay.
I don't know if I would go that far. But basically what happened one day is we took my daughter to her first day of preschool. I have 2 kids. My daughter is now 16.
Wow.
My son is 14. He's a healthy
Yep.
14-year-old. We're very blessed. So we took her to her first day of preschool, and then we took my son to the park. And he'd been having these really weird symptoms where he would like grab the back of his head and cry a little bit, but it wasn't really extreme and it would go away really quickly. So I was trying as a mom not to be concerned about that.
Right.
But that day when we took him to the park, I watched him walk.
Mm.
And I knew it was neurological because of what I do.
Yep.
Watching him, and he was 2, toddler, but
Yep.
I knew immediately. And it scared me to my core. I immediately started shaking. I called the pediatrician. They couldn't get us in. This was a Friday. They couldn't get us in till Monday. I tried to calm myself down, but by the next morning, I was like, I can't wait. And I took him to Mom's Intuition. I took him to Loma Linda Pediatric ER. And the resident there, of course, I was hoping, oh, maybe he has an inner ear, something going on, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And thank goodness the resident that I dealt with believed me in my intuition, because she watched him walk and she was like, his ears look fine, this and that. She didn't know it. I wasn't leaving without a CT scan at that point. But she came back and said, the attending agreed, let's go ahead and do a CT scan. And of course, I was doing that to rule that out.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, it came back that that's what it was, which was devastating, obviously, to our family.
Yep.
It was a very scary, very traumatic time. Our biggest thing at that point was like, is it operable? Like, what is it? Is it operable? What are we looking at?
Yeah.
And we had the most amazing pediatric neurosurgeon. This man, Dr. Sadanand, he's out there somewhere. Angel on earth, amazing man. He would not tell us exactly what it was until he took it out and they biopsied it. So they did the surgery, longest surgery, of course. It was very scary as parents
waiting
and our little baby boy over 10-hour surgery. But he came out. He did well during the surgery. They were able to remove the entire tumor. It's called medulloblastoma. So it's a posterior fossa tumor. So it was attached to his cerebellum, which is why his balance.
That makes sense.
Right?
Right.
So he recovered really well. We were extremely blessed, but it was cancerous. Mm-hmm. So at that point, it was explained like, this is the best protocol for your son because he's under 3 years of age. Typically, they do radiation for brain tumors, but they don't want to radiate a brain for a child under 3. Right. Because it causes all kinds of, more cognitive delays and different things that can happen. So he had, thank goodness, St. Jude had developed a chemo-only protocol, and that's what he went through. So he went through 5 cycles of chemotherapy and then a cycle of high-dose chemotherapy and a stem cell transplant. And a stem cell transplant is basically a bone marrow transplant, but it was using his own cells. Okay. So after his first cycle of chemo, they harvested his own cells. And then after the high-dose chemo wiped out all of his bone marrow and all of that, they gave him his cells back. Okay. It was extremely scary, extremely stressful, obviously. When a child goes through chemotherapy, they're inpatient because they have to be monitored. Mm-hmm. So he was in the hospital a lot. I tried to work during that time because I am the primary breadwinner for our household. Yeah. So I tried. And then, one of the side effects of chemotherapy can be low platelets, which can cause nosebleeds and all these scary things. And my son had a nosebleed one day when I was at work, and my husband called me in a panic. He couldn't even call 911 because he was trying to help my son. It was very scary. And at that moment, I was like, I'm not working anymore. Plus, with both of our kids, our poor daughter, like someone having to be at the hospital, thank goodness for grandparents filling in to stay with her. Right. So yeah, it was a lot. And our son was very off balance. Post-surgery, he went through a lot of physical therapy, which is very difficult to be on the other side of that as the parent. Our PT was like pushing him and I was like, my baby. Yeah. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. But we're very blessed. Like after about a year of PT and a lot of doing things a lot at home, with his balance, you'd never know. You never know. And our PT was funny because she was like, I'm not worried about him. He's got you.
Oh, great.
My husband built him stairs. So I have those in my motor room now.
That's so great.
That helped him recover doing the stairs. Yeah. And he's been basically healthy ever since. He has a few little, like he gets tired more easily than most kids. But nothing to complain about. We know other families that have dealt with a lot, worse side effects from surgery and treatment and all that. So, definitely a really rough time. But very grateful for my work family who stepped up, during that time and supported me. And they were like, you just go take care of your son and your family. And I came back the following school year.
Yeah. So, and I know like you shared about how your son had cancer, but that wasn't the first time that cancer touched your family. And so briefly, can you share about the next cancer journey?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Because I'm sure they had to step up again.
Yeah. So 10 years later.
Oh, man.
Yeah, unfortunately, 10 years later. So he was diagnosed in 2013. And in 2023, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So, it was a lot. Screening needs to be better for women. I had a perfectly normal mammogram just a few months before I was diagnosed. So if you're a woman and you're out there, especially if you have dense tissue, you need to push for an ultrasound, an MRI, better screening, because mammograms are wonderful, but they don't pick up on a lot of cancers. And my cancer was stage 2B, so it was still considered early. But I did opt for a double mastectomy because I didn't want to have to worry about it anymore.
Absolutely.
And it was a good thing I did because it was in my lymph nodes.
Okay.
So I did have to go through chemotherapy and radiation. And that was almost worse. Finding that out was almost worse than an original diagnosis. Like having to go through chemo and it was a lot. Yeah. But I did work. I worked the entire time. And I think because I have a job that I love so much, it helped keep things normalized for me. Okay. I would have chemo on Thursday and I would take the weekend off. And I, most of the time, went back to work on Monday. There were a few times where I had this really, really nasty chemotherapy. They call it the red devil for a reason. It was really, really bad. There was a couple times where I didn't go Monday. Wasn't up for going back to work on Monday, but would go Tuesday. And then slowly it'd start to feel better. And then I had chemo every 2 weeks for 16 weeks.
That is so impressive to me.
It's not, it's being a person that's active and driven. And I exercised that whole time too. And I will tell you, never in my life have I been more grateful for being an active, healthy person. Because I know a lot of people say, well, that's supposed to prevent you from getting cancer. And yeah, that's true. But you still might get cancer. And let me tell you, if you do get cancer, you're going to want to be in good shape. Yeah. You want to be healthy. And it helped me recover from every cycle of chemo. And then I had a short break. And then I started radiation. And that was actually during NAPEC. So I took a break. I took a break from radiation to go to NAPEC. That was also my 50th birthday weekend.
That's right. I remember you getting celebrated that weekend.
Crazy. I turned 50 on that Friday. And so it was kind of a whirlwind. And so I finished radiation in December of 2023. And then I just had what I hope is my final reconstructive surgery in May.
Oh, no.
And so I'm feeling really good because it's kind of, even after the end of treatment, it was then I was looking at reconstruction.
Yeah.
So it was a lot, I also had a hysterectomy in there because I'm on hormone blockers, and the fewer hormones, the better.
What a journey.
So I had 5 surgeries in the span of 2 years.
Heidi.
Yeah. So it was a lot. It was a lot, but it helps to have a job that you love, that you're motivated to come back to. That kind of helps keep you going,
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucks, but it's life. Things happen. You never in a million years think that your child is going to get cancer. I wasn't as shocked when I was diagnosed because it's more common for women, but and at least I had some knowledge of what I was going through because of what I had gone through with my son. But so grateful for our community of APE teachers. I don't know what I would do without my little tribe, Leslie, Nicole, my APE sisters. with all that support. And they did a whole Facebook campaign at that time where everybody took pictures in pink and posted them on our APE Facebook pages.
What amazing
peeps. It was great. I didn't know they were doing that, and I didn't expect it. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing all these pictures of everybody wearing pink. And it was so helpful going into surgery, like just knowing that you have that kind of support.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the personal journey with some of those struggles that we all have to face at one point or another.
Absolutely. We all have something. And I feel like if we don't share our somethings, then no, we don't get over our somethings very easy.
Well, I think especially nowadays with social media,
right?
You just see the happy, perfect people, you know, online. And
let's be real, adapted PE teachers.
Exactly. That's not real life. That's not real life. So I think talking about how we manage some of the struggles that we go through, our job is very physical and it's very demanding.
It is.
And so I think we have to kind of be honest with ourselves and what we can and can't do. And at that point, like with my son, where I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I can't focus at work when my son
had to just
needs me. And done. Like, sorry, and that's okay. You know, when we have to go through those times in our lives, and I think the more we share, the better, because let's be real. Let's be real. Let's not be fake. Social media, the beautiful people.
So I want to get into what you're passionate about with your job, because I feel like so many districts and people and adapted PE teachers and just parents don't have a great understanding of that early childhood adapted PE. Even like in my state, like we do adapted PE for preschool, but I think a lot of people are there's just like this like cloud of like, what do I do? How can I advocate? And so like one of the questions I asked you for this podcast was, what are you passionate about? What do you wish people would ask you about? And automatically it was like early childhood.
Which is what people do usually.
Right. It's just you. So that's why I have you here. So for the last half of the podcast, I want to ask you some of those questions. So my question for you to start is, what is your response to people who tell you, we just don't do preschool adapted PE? How does that make you feel?
I always have to like, stop myself, like, oh, okay, well, why not? Why aren't you? And there is this misconception of adapted PE in a lot of districts that it's K-12, 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 right? And we all know that it's not, that it's 3 through 22. Our credential in California actually starts at birth. So there are some adapted PE teachers that if a child needs infant services and their district has infant teachers, they will actually be like low incidence service providers on the IFSP. So and that's kind of the first thing you have to talk about is like, okay, well, special ed is 3 through 22. So we can't ignore what we call like the bookends, right? 3 to 5 and then 18 to 22.
That's federal law.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I start is, with the federal law and the definition of, special education, and that just, adapted PE is a service. And they also kind of, the typical thing that we get is, PE, like in the state of California, for example, very grateful. We actually have a PE requirement in the state of California, 200 minutes every 10 days for elementary students, 400 minutes every 10 days for middle school, high school, but it doesn't start until first grade. So even though our kindergartners, and now we have TK, they do have standards to meet, but the minutes aren't required. So, but we don't provide, PE is not required until first grade. So why should we be providing adapted physical education? And that goes back to, hi, Garth. Yes, I'm mentioning the letter. We'll get to the letter, right? That doesn't matter. That, adapted PE is a special education service. So we should be providing it starting at the age of 3 if the students do have gross motor delays. So typically my biggest question is, well, your preschool assessment teams, how are they addressing gross motor delays if they're not involving adapted PE teachers as part of that initial? Sometimes it's physical therapy. I get that answer. Sometimes it's OT. But physical therapy really is more about ambulation and the child being able to access their educational environment.
Yes.
And then we are looking at all the skills that the child is going to need in order to be able to participate in physical education. So kind of delineating what does OT do, what does PT do, what does APE do really helps.
Yep.
When people start to understand if there is a suspected gross motor delay at the preschool level, that the adapted physical education specialist really should be looking at that. And are we addressing every area related to the suspected disability? Again, federal law states that at an initial assessment, we need to be doing that. We can't just ignore if there's a gross motor delay or just say, oh, well, the OT and the PT, they've got that covered, because they really don't necessarily. So that's kind of the first thing, that when we start to have that conversation. But I do often get that look like, oh my gosh, kind of shock and a little bit of fear in our APE teachers that have never worked with preschoolers, because they don't like, how do I work with a preschooler? I don't even know how to do that.
Special little movers.
And they are, and I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
So I get it. It would be like if you asked me right now to go work with a large group of high school kids and adapted PE. I haven't done that in a really long time. So that would make me a little nervous, right? So I get it. But part of that is also training in our adapted PE programs.
Yep.
Making sure that we're including that in our teacher preparation programs, that APE teachers understand that preschool services should be offered, and that different ways of being able to work with different age groups if they don't have a lot of experience working with the preschool population.
Yeah, I was just thinking back as you were saying that, like, what training did I get in my undergrad for preschool? We might have had maybe a couple of hours, but I just wonder, like, maybe they need to put that as like a student teaching, like, add-on. Like, you need to spend at least a couple weeks in preschool, because if we are really licensed, 3 through 22, we need to like be prepared for that.
It's very true. And I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Cal State San Bernardino. And in the classes that I teach, of course, I address preschool APE.
Right.
And I've also talked a lot with our professors that are like teaching our assessment classes and things like that. And I'll even come in and do like a guest lecture for them specifically on preschool assessment, because that's another area. Preschool assessment is very different than elementary, middle school, high school APE assessment, because most of our preschoolers, they're 2 years, 10 months, 2 years, 11 months when we test them. Well, most of them cannot participate in direct assessment. So, and even just the tools are different, because I can't tell you how many times I get, well, the TGMD is normed for 3-year-olds. Most of the 3-year-olds we test are delayed. They're functioning at the 18 to 24 month level, or even the 12-month level. They cannot participate in the TGMD. So then it's like, okay, well, what assessments can we use? So
I was going to ask you, like, what are those tools? What are those tools?
I am constantly on the lookout for more tools, and I have lots of them. And I've even purchased some that I like and some that I don't like. So the developmental assessment of young children is one that I utilize quite often. And in the state of California, our infant teachers use that assessment for like all the different areas. So it separates all the different areas. Like there's one for cognitive, there's speech and language. And I discovered years ago that with the developmental assessment of young children, it's actually called the DAISY, and it's the 2. So the DAISY 2, that you can get a standard score, and that assessment tool allows you to use observation and parent interview.
That's incredible.
To give credit. You don't know how happy I was when I found that assessment, because I found it before our state was using it. Nobody else at our school site was using it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
we use B2 items in Minnesota, and we can use parent observation and like some of that outside of setting information, because like I was just thinking about like you guys have to use so many like standardized tests in California. I feel like it's like
we
all
don't
the time,
have
right?
to, but we need to at least attempt a standardized assessment.
Gotcha.
Or you would need to put a statement in your report that the
Okay.
student, the IEP team has determined that the student cannot participate in standardized assessment, therefore non-standardized measures. Like, so we at least have to attempt one. So what I used to do was I used to like, I attempted one, but student couldn't participate. So I would use criterion assessments.
That makes sense.
So I still use those criterion assessments, but then I also use the DAISY. It's not the best assessment. It's very heavy on locomotor and balance skills. So kids that struggle in those areas kind of max out pretty quickly.
Okay.
And there aren't a lot of eye-hand coordination ball skills on it. So I like to pair it with the CARE R2, which is a criterion, and there's a ton of different items on it. So it kind of fills in all the gaps that the DAISY, it doesn't give you information-wise. You're going to get a standard score, yes. The other thing about that test, and I always say this, is that I always go with the age equivalent on that test, not the standard score or the percentile rank, because what we found is that it scores kids high, like they might have a below average standard score, and they might be a little bit above the 7th percentile, which is kind of what we look at in our state as far as eligibility criteria. But when you look at the age equivalent, it's more than 30% below the student's age level. So in our state, 30% below age level, 1.5 standard deviations below the mean, or 7th percentile or below. So that's typically kind of, I'll look at it, and most of the time they might have a standard score in the low 80s, but their age equivalent is still more than 30% below their chronological age. And then I do compare that. This is why in special ed, we don't just use one test, right? We use more than one.
Yeah.
I always compare that with the CARE R, like their approximate age level on the CARE R. And then I also use a test called the Southern California Ordinal Scales that gives a functional age level, which I don't even know if they're printing that anymore, because I've tried to order, my district has tried to order more protocols and they're not responding. So it might be out of print at this point. But those are the three I like to use the most: the DAISY, the ordinal scales, and the CARE R. If a student can participate in more standardized tests, then I will use the Brigance, the IED3, because that is standardized. So if I have a higher functioning student that can participate, I'll do the DAISY and the Brigance and the CARE R.
I want to say,
on the student.
I was just thinking, like, when I first came into adapted PE, I think we used the APEAS. The Brigance sounds familiar.
The APEAS preschool is out there.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's free.
I work
and
with the big
online.
kids. Yeah. So I work with the big kids, so I don't have to pay attention to that. Probably like the same way you don't have to pay attention to like the big kid stuff. So here's my next question for you, because I know you're really good at like advocating, right? And teaching other teachers to advocate. If districts don't have early childhood services for ages 3 to 5, how would you empower an adapted PE teacher to start advocating to their district for those services?
Yeah, there's a few different ways that they could do that. One of the things I always recommend is I hand out resources left and right. I have full slide presentations. This is typically what I present at conferences. Sometimes it's focused more on assessment and service delivery. Sometimes it's focused more on advocacy. So, and I'm happy to share my slide presentation. So anybody can email me, hey, I really want to have this conversation with my administrator. And my slide presentations kind of compile all the resources, right? So
there you go.
Basically explaining, the federal law, including the letter. Yes, Garth,
Dear colleague letter.
The Dear Colleague letter from 2013 that basically it states that it doesn't matter that if your school district isn't providing PE to preschoolers can still receive adapted PE because it is a service. So that's kind of eye-opening to a lot of administrators. They're kind of like,
oh no,
they are under that misconception that K-12, oh, we don't have to look at that yet.
Right.
which honestly is very frustrating for me because early intervention is key.
Yeah.
The more early intervention we give these kids, the less intervention they're going to need. So to me, if I can hit it hard when they're in preschool, they gain a bunch of skills while they're here. Then by the time they leave, they've got a lot of the foundational skills. If we wait, not only is the neurodevelopmental period different once they're past 5 years, so they're not going to learn those skills as quickly as they would, when they're younger.
Yep.
That it's going to take them longer to learn them, and then they're further behind than they would be. So I think explaining motor development, early intervention, and legally, when you look at it that way, it doesn't make any sense that they wouldn't be providing those services beginning when the students are turning 3. So I would say you definitely need to speak with your special education administrators. Speak with your preschool teams. Preschools typically have assessment teams. Speak with those teams. I recently presented to a preschool assessment team, and I was really nervous about it because the OT was there, PT would I was afraid they were going to feel like I was stepping on toes, and they were so happy that we were there because the OTs and the PTs were trying to fill in the gaps.
Oh, because so you gave them what they needed.
Yes, because adapted PE wasn't being provided at the preschool level.
Sense.
And they're like, I know this isn't my job, really, but no one else is doing it and the student needs it. So there are some amazing PTs out there and OTs that are filling in those gaps in a lot of this, especially in the states that don't have a good adapted PE presence.
Yep.
And so Garth Tymeson actually asked me to join a school-based PT group. And so I help support them too. And I'm like, you guys are amazing. I don't know how you're trying to do this. Awesome. And they're the ones that are like, how do we help us? How do we get adapted PE for our preschoolers?
I just wonder how often this is happening all over the US. You know what I mean?
It's a lot.
They can't put their finger on it, but they're like, something's missing.
Yeah.
And it's adapted PE.
That's it. That's it. And a lot of the PTs and OTs know that. And yet they're told either we don't have adapted PE in our district or we don't provide APE services to our preschoolers. Let's just a blanket, Which and
is against the law.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely something that I know a lot of APE teachers out there are fighting for, and also other service providers because they see their students not getting what they need. So having those conversations with the special education administrators, as well as the preschool assessment team. And if there is an administrator that's over the preschool, we have a principal, having those conversations, we need to be offering these services to our students, and we can be on the initial assessment, and we should be on the initial assessment for some of these kids, because if we have a motor team, we're missing pieces if we're not including the entire motor team. And then expecting OTs and PTs, they're not trained in physical education curriculum. They're medically trained. Yes, they do school-based services, but their scope of practice is very different than the adapted PE specialist at the preschool level. Yeah. Sometimes we overlap. Absolutely. Our PT and I, especially at the preschool level, sometimes we write goals that we share. Sometimes, let's say it's a kicking goal, for example. So
you write it together.
She's right. We're looking at it from the standing balance perspective, and I'm looking at it from standing balance and the eye-foot coordination part. Yeah. So sometimes we'll share goals because sometimes things are similar, especially at the preschool level. Yeah. So yes, there is some overlap, but in our district, we are very clear. In fact, the PT and myself wrote a statement together because when we do initial IEPs, parents have heard of PT and OT. Most of them have never heard of adapted physical education. So when we do our initial assessments, we do those as a motor team. So APE, OT, PT, and we explain to the parents the difference between adapted PE and school-based physical therapy. And then on our reports, we also wrote a statement that basically says the difference, because sometimes kids are eligible for a PT and not APE, or vice versa.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's just helpful
clarity
for parents to understand. And honestly, it's really helpful for administrators too. So, we get administrators in our IEPs and we go through our reports and they're there and they're listening. Okay, let me explain the difference. And a lot of times after the meeting, they'll be like, I never really knew the difference. So I appreciate you explaining that in the IEP. So it's really, yes, it's for parents, but it's also for any other team member that might not understand the difference. And that can go for teachers as well, because teachers might not know, oh, I need to make a referral. This student in my class has gross motor delays.
Yep.
Who do I refer to? So it's helpful across the board.
Yep. Can you give me like a minute or a minute and a half to share about like service delivery models for preschoolers? What does that look like? What should it look like?
Well, it depends on the student, right?
Exactly.
Never be cookie cutter. Drives me crazy. The number one thing is we're not providing services to our preschoolers. The number two thing is this is how we provide services. Mm-hmm. Oh, we do push in. We go into the class. We work with the whole class. No, it's dependent on the student and what the student requires in order to meet their goals. So service delivery models can be lots of different things. At the preschool level, it is very common to do a push-in or a collaborative model where you're going into the preschool class. That is an amazing service delivery model. It works really well for a lot of our students because that is their natural learning environment. And then as the APE teacher, you have support of the staff to help with behaviors and things like that. So push-in or collaboration is a great service delivery model. However, some of our students need a little bit more practice. And I found when I do push-in, especially students with a physical disability and orthopedic impairment, they might not get enough skill practice during that push-in session. And so I might want to do more of a pull-out model with them.
Yeah.
That can be a challenge. I am very blessed. We have a motor room. Not all APE teachers have a motor room at their preschool site. So they might have to do push-in just because they don't have a motor room. Or you could find a space, to do pull-out. So push-in, pull-out. The OT and we also do what I call, we call sensory motor collaborative groups, where typically we're one-on-one with students. So if there's 3 of us, the OT, the CODA, and myself, we'll have 3 students. There's only 2 of us, we'll just have 2 students. And it's a structured rotation. Nice. So stations, basically.
Cool.
They match an icon, either a picture, if they need a picture of the activity at the next station, or a colored icon. So I do like gross motor stations. Our OT does more sensory and fine motor stations. We set a timer. I use a timer app. Thank you, Kasha. She is the guru on station work. And so I used to just use a timer. Stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. Did you start the timer? I don't know. These timer apps are amazing. And it's literally just a workout interval timer app. So all I have to do is start the app and then it times the stations. And it also, there's time embedded in there to transition from station to station. So that's another service delivery model option. And then also collaborating with other service providers. So I was just talking this morning to one of our speech therapists. We're going to do a collaborative model for a certain group of students because a lot of times you work with your speech therapist. Kids talk a lot more when they're moving. There's research out there to back that. So, and integrating language concepts into gross motor activities is very beneficial for kids. So you can also do those service collaboration models with other services as well. Just be careful that you delineate it that way on the IEP. You don't want a parent coming back and saying, oh, well, you're double dipping because you're providing APE and OT at the same time. So we put that on our services and the comment section that it's a collaborative group with OT, with speech, or it's, whatever that's going to look like, so that we're not, so it's clear. It's very clear. And we explain that to the parents. We do these, we write the services on the IEP as collaborative, and we explain to the parents that it is a collaborative service that we're both working with the students at the same time.
Yeah, that's something that I really learned this year is that, like, if you have services a certain way, like, you have to be super clear on the IEP, like, so that not only the parents know, but admin, if they need to look at something, that it'll be clear for them too. What do you think? So this kind of goes into like, what are your favorite activities, but also what are some of the mistakes that adapted PE teachers make in providing developmentally appropriate activities for preschool?
I would say the number one thing is that people that just don't have experience yet just expect kind of a little bit too much. I think the main thing with preschool adapted PE is to focus on those foundational, fundamental gross motor skills. So we work a lot on just basic catching and throwing and kicking and balance beam and balance activities. And I think if they think about it in that fundamental perspective, that we have to work on the building blocks first. And even a lot of our students on the autism spectrum don't even understand catching yet because they're socially unaware. So it's what I call like reciprocal motor skills. That's one of the main things I work on with students that are on the autism spectrum if they don't have that skill yet. So I'll even have them sit in a cube chair to take away any balance deficits. Let's have them sit and let's just focus on extending arms, learning how to visually trap a ball. It's very, very basic, fundamental motor skills until you kind of know where your students are. Some of them absolutely have some higher skills. So you're going to kind of developmentally go from there. So going back and kind of reviewing your motor development and looking at what's that baseline for that student, and then looking at how you can incrementally get them, to that goal that you've written for them. I think that's the most important thing. The other thing is that, yes, we have to do a lot of repetition with our students, but if you're bored, your students are bored.
Yes.
So if you're like, oh my God, how many times
here we go again.
Do this? That should be like, okay, I need to do something different. And we all do that. Let's say, we talked about this before, right? Let's be real. Let's be real. It happens to all of us. We just kind of rely on our toolbox. That's why conferences are so important. And professional development is so important to kind of light that fire, give us different ideas on different ways that we can make our lessons new and different. And that helps get our students' attentions too, using different equipment, working on skills in different ways. But yeah, I would say that's probably kind of the number one and number two mistakes that are kind of typical.
Love it. Thank you for sharing those. I just have just a thought, and then we're going to talk about NAPIC.
Okay.
I really wanted to have one of my professors from the University of South Carolina. I just finished the master's in adaptive PE. Hope maybe next year we can get Dr. Allie Bryan on the show.
Allie and I have been trying. We've been trying to collaborate on something for like ever, and you think I'm busy? She is just too busy. Yeah,
she's like, I'm out of the country. I'm like, okay. So there's this study, and I think you maybe have read it, but I think it's super important that the results of this study, it's a study called Motor Competence Levels and Developmental Delays in Early Childhood, a multi-center cross-sectional study conducted in the USA. And a big part of my class was actually hearing from Allie. It was online. But the results of this is so interesting to me because at the high school level, we always talk about, I'm like, man, these kids just like can't throw as well anymore. Like they can't, play a whole big like volleyball game. Like, why is that? Well, it turns out that 77% of pre-K students are already developmentally delayed, which makes sense because now, they're getting to high school and they don't have the skills that, that their parents had, when they were at that level. And so the thing is, this is all over the world though. And they studied in all different countries, but the only country, I think it was Belgium. And the reason why that they did not have pre-K students developmentally delayed is because they had high quality physical education with a high quality physical education teacher at the pre-K level.
Yep.
And so I always just keep that in mind now when I'm doing anything. Like the kids that qualified for adapted PE 15 years ago when I started would potentially no longer qualify because it brought the norms down, the stats down. And so it's just all shifted, so.
Yeah. And a lot of that is, technology, COVID. I'm thrilled if I go to test a student and the parents like, oh, we do catching, we do throwing, we do, we're actually outside playing with our kids. Yeah. We take our kid to the park because honestly, it's not the norm anymore.
Yeah.
And that, that's definitely part of that. But it just goes to show how important the early intervention is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, can you tell us about NAPIC? How is NAPIC this year? Really briefly.
Yeah.
So what's coming?
So the National Adapted Physical Education Conference this year in 2025, we combined with our state capered conference. It was amazing. It was everything that everybody hoped it would be. When the idea was announced, we're in the field of adapted physical education, and in physical education, we're going towards more inclusive environments. And so to have a conference reflect that was really important, because the idea behind it was we wanted our regular physical education teachers that attend capered. There are always APE sessions at capered, but not as many as NAPEC. So we wanted those teachers to have the opportunity to attend adapted PE sessions, and we wanted adapted PE teachers to be able to attend more general type sessions. And then there were a lot of sessions that were geared towards inclusive settings, unified PE, unified sports. And so then you have both. You've got your APE people, your Gen Ed PE people, dance people, to be able to all come together in these different sessions. And it was absolutely amazing and incredible. Kudos to the conference planning committee, because they were all just amazing at making it happen. It was also delayed because there were fires near the Pasadena Convention Center. And so it was supposed to be in January. They had to postpone it to May, which we all understood. But of course, we were a little sad. But I'll tell you, it was great to go to a conference in May when you're like at the end of the year and your brain is fried. It was great. It was great to have a break. So there is no NAPEC conference this year because we combined. We kind of normally we're in November. So we did not do November 2024. It was pushed to 2025. So this fall, we are hoping to do something virtually. We don't know yet. I can't really say or announce it because it may happen. It may not happen. Hopefully it will happen. And there will be something, but there will be an in-person NAPEC in fall of 2026. We do not have an exact location yet, but it will be up in Northern California. So it will be happening. But we don't have the exact location, but we know it will be up north because we've had several conferences southern, and we do try to alternate. So that's kind of where we're at with that right now.
Awesome. We're going to jump ahead here because I normally do my takeaways, but I want to jump to Fit and Fun because not only are they our sponsors, but Heidi uses Fit and Fun. So I want you to share a little bit of how you use their products.
Awesome. So hi Pam. I don't know if she's watching, but she's amazing. So Tim Davis from SUNY Cortland in New York connected me with Pam, and she sent me a whole bunch of stuff, and I absolutely love it. I love the rollouts that they have. For those of you that don't know, you can use these really cool rollouts for hopscotch and different activities, and they're all thematic, jumping over the logs. I love the hopscotch robot that we have.
Cute.
They're so cute. And I absolutely love them, and I share them. I love their stencils. Their stencils are amazing. We moved to a new school site this year, and I'm still working with our administrators to, now that everything is kind of done, I really want to get some stencils so that we have some motor paths and things like that for the kids to follow, when they're walking to and from class. The one I saw the other day, they have ants. What do we sing? I go to pick up my kids from class to go to the motor room. We sing The Ants Go Marching. And they have ants that you can put on the ground that the kids can march on. And I know that our district has previously purchased things from Fit and Fun Playscapes already. So hopefully this year we'll get more into that kind of stuff. But if you guys don't know about them, go online, look at their products. They're absolutely amazing for adapted PE and PE teachers. Their resources are great, and they're especially fit for kids with special needs because they're bright colors, they're attention getters. They work well. They're great. They're wonderful. I love using all of their products that I have.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm sure Pam will be so excited to hear all that. She loves her company, and she loves partnering with people like you to get the things out to help. She's one of our people that supports all kids, right? And so
and they've that's why they connected me, because she wanted that preschool APE perspective on a lot of their products. And their company is wonderful. They're amazing people.
Love it. So Heidi, I want you to stay on with me on this because sometimes I pop our guests out and back in, but like I'm just thinking about the things that I took away from today. As you were sharing your story about your background and then getting into like your cancer journey, the thing that we both kind of said, like, oh, let's just be real adapted PE teachers. I think that's one of the things that I took away from today is like when we share, we get real with each other and it just kind of makes it easier to handle the hard stuff. And I know for me, like early childhood isn't where I am currently teaching and probably won't. We actually just hired a new early childhood teacher. I might need to connect with you guys. But it's good to know so that you can be like, for me to be able to advocate with our new teacher, like, hey, this is where this comes from. This is that letter, the dear colleague letter, keep this in your bag, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And so those were some of the things that I took from today and continue to just like, we do our stuff. We do early childhood, we do adapted PE, but like the way that we get to where we are, our stories, how we find where we're supposed to be, like sometimes it takes a couple of weird twists and turns and then we figure it out, right?
Plot twists.
Plot
Plot twist.
So I'm curious, what was your favorite takeaway from this podcast today?
Similar to yours. I think just being real and having the support of, you know, adapted PE teachers are they're special people.
They are.
But sometimes we can feel isolated. I know there's people out there who are the only adapted PE teacher in their district, or they might not be the only one, but they don't have a centralized office. So they never see their other APE teachers. They're not technically a department or a team. And you can feel extremely isolated in this job. And I think that knowing that there is a network of other people doing the same things that you're doing, that you can ask questions of, that you can bounce ideas off of, because we all learn from each other. So I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me in participating today. And just the whole philosophy behind your podcast and how amazing it is and how it's going to bring a lot of those APE teachers together.
Yeah. I just super appreciate you coming on today. That was the next thing I was going to do is introduce our next guest and then thank everybody for listening today. So for those of you who are wondering who's going to be on next, it's the one and only adapted PE legend, Garth. Garth is just like always doing something and he's always like, I don't know how to just giving suggestions, but also in a positive way that you're like, oh, I probably should do that. You know what I mean? Like always in the best, like higher ed professor, like professional way. And he always makes me think like,
he is so amazing. I literally have him on speed dial.
Yes.
And he always says onwards and upwards. And I'm just like,
I love it.
Yep, we got to just keep moving forward. And he's retired.
I know, but he's,
oh, it'd be great to have him on. I love the way he supports parents too. It's amazing.
Yes. So I never had him as a professor, but I wish I had. So
right. I think a lot of us do.
Yeah. So he's coming on next month. We'll let you know when that happens. And then lastly, I just want to, again, thank you, Heidi, for coming on. And to anyone who's listening or rewatching or watching on Apple or Spotify, we will get those episodes up for you when we get around to it. And Fit and Fun, thank you, Pam, again for sponsoring us for the 25-26 podcast year. And here are the ways that you can connect with us on social media. We're on X at Heartbeats of Adapted PE. Again, on Blue Sky, same thing, Heartbeats of APE at bluesky.social. And then you can always email us at heartbeatsofadaptedpe@gmail.com. You can watch us on YouTube at Heartbeats of Adapted PE podcast. And then usually on the Health and Physical Education Collective, if you're in there, it's like a bazillion teachers connecting, kind of like we used to be on Twitter, but it's without all the Twitter noise. Okay, so it's X, right? I know, but also this is going right now on the Shape America podcast or on the Shape America YouTube. So our podcast is on their YouTube page as well. You can find us on Spotify and Apple. And I want to bring one comment to the page from your friend Nicole. She goes,
Hi,
"Woohoo,
Nicole.
Heidi!" So special shout out to
Yeah.
Nicole Risen. Thank you, Nicole, for joining us in the comments. But as far as our podcast, that is it. Thank you for joining us for episode 5. Join us next time for it will be episode 5 next. Thanks for joining us for episode 4. We'll see you for episode 5. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Boom.